This segment of the Alice Stewart Show is brought to you by Aero Plumbing. For all your household or business plumbing needs, call Aero Plumbing at 1-866-PLUMBER or schedule an appointment online at aeroplumbing.net.
We are back. Jason Cline filling in for Alice Stewart today. I want to say before we jump into this segment, this segment is sponsored by Aero Plumbing. You can catch them at aeroplumbing.net or you can call them 588-3200. That's 501-588-3200. I think they do residential and business. You know, I've not used Aero Plumbing yet because I'm a pretty handy guy. But for those who aren't, or if there's ever a situation that I can't just quickly fix myself, I'll tell you, Aero would be the people I'd call. So aeroplumbing.net for your needs, 588-3200, especially with it getting cold. You know, I was listening yesterday to the Wall Street Journal's morning thing, and they said that the number one issue that happens with the onset of winter, the most common problem that they see is not snow collapsing on roofs or things like that, but it's pipes freezing.
Yeah.
And so, you know, Aero Plumbing, I would say, they can probably come out, maybe they can insulate your pipes for you. Maybe you just want to call them and find out if they do, you know, what they can do for you. But I'll tell you that frozen pipes are a no joke. It sucks. So that's the most common problem that they see across the country. I would say, you know, get yourself prepared because it's going to be warm again this weekend. That's what the forecast says. It's supposed to be in the 60s this weekend and normalized. But, you know, it's like, you know, almost record-setting cold temperatures right now. So be prepared, you know, because being cold is miserable, in my opinion. My house was kind of cold last night because I didn't turn up the heat early enough. Before I didn't get home till later last night, and it was cold, and that sucks. Mm-hmm. It really does. And so, anyways, plus I live in Hillcrest. I have like a drafty old house, so it's kind of. Yeah. But anyway, so aeroplumbing.net. That's what I wanted to just talk about. I wanted to talk about immigration for a minute. We haven't touched on this yet, but I'll tell you, this is coming. And the president has proved time and time again he has no problem either. I mean, the basic negotiation status, let's pretend, Krista, you're Congress, and I'm the president, and I say, hey, Krista, we should do something on immigration. And you're like, well, you know, I represent the people of America just like you do. And, you know, we don't really agree on it. Mm-hmm. So what would I do? I'm just going to do what I want to. I'm just going to do whatever I want to anyway. And that's what the president's doing here. He's going to, you know, execute through executive action, basically institute rules through executive fiat. And so his own quotes, and I said this before we took the break, when talking to dreamers, who are the folks who are within where the DREAM Act fell under, which is, you know, younger people, dreamers, which are people who came to the United States illegally as very young children. He kind of protected them from deportation. His quote on broadening what he did for the dreamers, which is basically amnesty protection, he said, if we start broadening that, then especially I'll be ignoring the law in a way that I think will be very difficult to defend legally. So that's not an option. Mm-hmm. That's a huge deal. I mean, that's outside of, you know, when he sort of railed against executive action himself anyway. And we could pull the audio clips all day in a situation in which President Obama contradicts Senator Obama. Mm-hmm. But the problem with this is that these are not evolutions or, you know, coming around. You know, he came out for same-sex marriage in, what was that, 10 or 11? You know, and it, like as if this was some evolution. I think what we're seeing is that President Obama, as senator and as campaigner, was willing to say or do whatever he needed to enact his agenda.
Anything, yeah.
I mean, and that's what the Gruber deal's about, right?
Right.
I mean, what did he say? The stupidity of American people? Mm-hmm. The stupidity of American people. You know, and I was reading an article. I have this news service called Newsla. I don't know where I got it, but it emails me once a day. People who I'm connected with on LinkedIn, any news stories that shows up about them, which is pretty cool. And so I'm reading this story in the New Republic by Jonathan Cohn, and he talks about how he says the controversy over Jonathan Gruber, who's this Obamacare architect, he says, you know, this isn't just some guy that I'm watching in the news. He says, you know, I've relied heavily on Gruber's expertise over the years and come to know him very well. Mm-hmm. He served as an explainer of basic concepts. He's delivered data at my request. And he's even published articles on this publication, The New Republic. Mm-hmm. He says, my feelings about Gruber, in other words, are not that of a distant observer. They are, for better or worse, the views of somebody who holds him and his work in high esteem. And so they goes on to talk about, whether he himself was the architect. And here's the deal, what most people don't know. Gruber was involved in the 90s when Clinton tried to pass healthcare reform. And he was the guy who really came forward with this, what he called the sort of the three-legged stool concept. Mm-hmm. And that was basically that, there's three pieces to this health insurance reform: that you require insurers to provide coverage to all people regardless of pre-existing conditions. You require people to buy coverage through some sort of mandate. And then the third one, providing financial assistance, right? These subsidies. And so he's the guy who would be the main advocate. And he's the guy who for like 20 years worked on this. Like, he's not some guy who just like, they called him up like, oh yeah, this dude Gruber's pretty smart. Like, we should bring him in. I mean, he was one of the primary drivers of this policy. He was
the guy.
The guy.
Yeah. And was it back in 2006, that video, of Obama where he's talking about taking his ideas and, like he's almost bragging about it, but then you now have him where he's saying, I don't know who he is. And he just got lost in the White House and, just kind of like making a joke out of it. Like, oh, I don't know who he is, but they're all denying that they know.
The interesting thing too, is that, who else has used Gruber before for healthcare reform? Who was a Republican governor who passed a healthcare reform model that became sort of a pilot program for Obamacare?
Was it Romney?
Romney.
Yeah.
I mean, and he was the governor of Massachusetts, and this guy's at MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, but like, that's a huge deal, right? Mm-hmm. Like, so the reason I say all of this, Gruber was not some casual observer of the process. The reason Gruber was on the map is because of his help with Romney getting, the subsidy situation in Massachusetts. And so it's crazy. It says faithful readers of the New Republic may remember Gruber's role in what became a significant, if ultimately ironic, moment of the 2008 campaign. It's easy to forget now, but when Obama first ran for president, he rejected the idea of an individual mandate. John Edwards, who had included a mandate in his plan, and Hillary Clinton, who planned to include one in hers, attacked Obama for this and cited a rough calculation that reform without a mandate would mean an additional 15 million people without health insurance. That came from Gruber. I mean, it's so like literally, this guy has been part of a national conversation around healthcare for a long time.
Yeah.
Deeply embroiled. This is a president and administration willing to say or do anything they can to get this done. And this goes back to the illegal immigration process. You're going to see amnesty. It's going to happen. You're going to have a president literally wake up, use his pen and his phone, and you're going to see him bypass Congress.
And there's nothing that we can do. I mean,
no, and and it's interesting because anyways, there's so much there. There's so much there. We've got to take a break, but I do want to thank Aero Plumbing one more time for sponsoring this part of the program. You can catch them at aeroplumbing.net, 501-588-3200. Catch them for all your residential or commercial needs. They can handle both. 501-588-3200, aeroplumbing.net.